After sending his new lover to meet a realtor to buy an apartment with his wife's money, Alexander hurried home from his business trip. He had no idea what surprise his quiet, modest wife had prepared for him. Sophia slowly sat down on the edge of the bathtub, unable to believe her eyes. 2 lines. After 15 years of marriage, countless nights spent crying into her pillow, and 4 unsuccessful IVF attempts, 2 lines seemed impossible. Yet the test in her shaking hands insisted it was real. "Oh my God, could this be true?" she whispered, pressing a palm to her lips. Outside, the sunny April day seemed brighter than ever. Their apartment in a high-rise building in one of Chicago's quiet neighborhoods suddenly felt full of new meaning. At 39, she was carrying a little miracle inside her. Her first instinct was to call Alexander immediately, but she stopped herself. Her husband was currently on a business trip in Milwaukee and wouldn't be home for 3 days. This wasn't news for a phone call. "I'll tell him when he gets back," Sophia decided, gently hiding the test in the top drawer of the dresser beneath a neatly folded stack of t-shirts. "Sophie, do you want some tea?" Her mother-in-law Margaret called from the kitchen. "Coming, Margaret." Margaret had been living with them for 7 years, ever since Sophia's father-in-law passed away. Sophia had worried initially, but their relationship turned out surprisingly warm. Margaret, a former English teacher, was wise and tactful, although she spoiled her son excessively at times. "You look quite rosy today," Margaret remarked as she poured tea into porcelain cups from the set they'd received as a wedding gift. "Do I?" Sophia absent-mindedly touched her cheek. "Probably just tired from work." Even at the notary office, it felt as busy as a beehive today. "Work doesn't usually make people glow like that." "After 35 years at school, I can tell," Margaret said with a knowing smile, but she didn't push any further. After tea, Sophia decided to check their joint bank account, wanting to estimate how much they could spend on setting up a nursery. Picking up her phone, she opened the banking app and froze. The last transaction showed a withdrawal of $120,000 dated yesterday. An icy chill washed over her body. Alexander never withdrew large sums without discussing it first. Those savings were meant for their future child. So why now? Sophia tried calling her husband, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Probably in a meeting, she thought, struggling to control her panic. Surely there had to be a reasonable explanation. The next day, after scheduling an ultrasound at the Zdorovi Medical Center, the same place where years ago doctors had delivered heartbreaking news about her fertility, Sophia suddenly heard a familiar melody. It was Alexander's ringtone. She froze in the hallway, rooted to the spot. The sound was coming from a doctor's office. Dr. L. V. Miller, obstetrician gynecologist. "You definitely need a repeat ultrasound in 2 weeks, Christina. Tell your husband there's nothing to worry about. The baby is developing normally at 16 weeks, came a voice from the room. "Thank you, Doctor. Alexander will be so relieved. He's been so worried about us. He even flew back early from his business trip just for this ultrasound," answered a young female voice. Sophia staggered back from the door, clamping her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto a plastic chair nearby. "Alexander. Business trip. A baby. 16 weeks. Fragments of sentences spun in her head, forming a horrific picture of betrayal. The office door opened abruptly. Sophia instinctively lowered her head, hiding her face behind a random magazine she'd grabbed from the table. "Alex, did you call the realtor?" She heard the cheerful voice of the young woman. "Rita said there's a great option in West Side, in that new building." "Yes, sweetheart, everything's arranged. You'll meet her tomorrow at the office." "Unfortunately, I need to get back to Milwaukee," came Alexander's painfully familiar voice. "But don't worry, I'll handle the finances. We'll buy you the best apartment, with a nursery and a walk-in closet, just as you wanted. You're the best." The unseen woman laughed happily, followed by the unmistakable sound of a kiss. When the couple finally moved away, Sophia allowed herself to breathe again. The blurry haze before her eyes slowly cleared. She felt like a character from one of those cheap daytime TV dramas she'd always mocked. How cliché. How pathetic. 15 years of marriage, ending with this. Sophia didn't go to her ultrasound that day. Later, she decided, as she slowly made her way out of the clinic. She felt like an entirely different woman than the one who had hurried here an hour earlier, ecstatic at the idea of seeing her long-awaited child on the ultrasound screen. As she reached the exit, Sophia nearly bumped into a young woman with vibrant red hair. "So that's you," flashed through Sophia's mind, as she glanced at the pretty face and neat little belly beneath a stylish tunic dress. Sophia didn't sleep at all that night. Her thoughts raced wildly, forming a strange mosaic of subtle hints and oddities she'd ignored for years. The increasingly frequent business trips over the past 2 years. The expensive new perfume Alexander suddenly favored. The secret smiles when glancing at his phone. Unexpected late nights at work. Phone calls he always took privately in another room. Everything was finally coming together into a dark, logical picture. In the morning, her eyes swollen from crying, Sophia immediately called Victoria, her boss and mentor. "Sweetheart, come right over," Victoria said firmly after hearing Sophia's emotional story. It was still early, and the notary office where Sophia had worked for the past 12 years was empty. Victoria, a sturdy woman with sharp eyes, hugged her tightly and sat her down in a chair. "This isn't good," Victoria said, carefully examining Sophia's exhausted face. "First, you're having tea with honey, then we'll figure this out." Over tea, Sophia laid out everything: the pregnancy, the sudden withdrawal from their savings, and the conversation she overheard at the medical center. "What a bastard," Victoria concluded bluntly. Hearing this harsh word from an intelligent woman somehow cleared Sophia's mind. "Now listen. You're pregnant. Stress is the last thing you need. Legally and morally, half of those savings are yours. The apartment too, by the way. But first, we need proof." "What kind of proof?" Sophia asked, feeling lost. "First, we need to find out who this realtor is and where your money is going." "You said her name's Rita?" Victoria pulled out an old notebook in a worn leather cover. "And this? What's her name? Christina? She's meeting with Rita today?" "Yes, at some real estate agency." "What if?" Victoria narrowed her eyes, a playful spark flashing briefly, unusual for her usually serious demeanor. "What if you just happen to show up there too? Not as Alexander Weston's wife, but as a potential buyer. No one there knows who you are." "You're suggesting I spy?" Sophia asked hesitantly. "I'm suggesting you protect your interests and your unborn child's future," Victoria answered firmly. 15 years together, and suddenly he decides to buy his pregnant mistress an apartment with your joint money. What if he plans to leave you penniless? Did you consider that? Sophia shook her head. She hadn't yet thought clearly about divorce. The pain of betrayal was still too fresh. "My point exactly," Victoria nodded. "I have a friend at the main office of City Realty. Let me call and find out which agencies operate in West Side. We need to catch them red-handed before doing anything else." An hour later, dressed in a business suit and sunglasses, Sophia stepped into the office of the new home real estate agency near Loyola University. At reception, she introduced herself as Sophia Victoria Johnson and explained she was interested in a 3-bedroom apartment in a newly built complex nearby. "Please have a seat. One of our agents will be right with you," smiled the receptionist. Sophia settled into a plush chair and picked up a glossy brochure. At the table next to her was a young woman with bright red hair, flipping through apartment photos on a tablet. Christina, Sophia identified her silently, glancing discreetly at her rival. The young woman was beautiful, fresh-faced, vibrant, with lively eyes and an easy smile. She didn't look at all like the homewrecker from a cheap soap opera. She genuinely seemed happy, gently touching her rounded belly. "She has no idea," Sophia thought with unexpected sadness. "She doesn't know Alexander is married, doesn't know there's another pregnant woman. She's a victim too." "Christina?" A slender young woman holding a folder approached the redhead. "I'm Margarita. We spoke on the phone." "Nice to meet you. Alexander called and asked me to show you the best 3-bedroom options at Sunny Park." "Yes, that's right," Christina smiled warmly. "He's my husband. He's away on a business trip right now, but he really wants me to choose the apartment quickly. Our family will be growing soon." "Congratulations," the realtor responded enthusiastically. "Then we definitely need something with a spacious nursery, right?" They headed into a separate office. Sophia pretended to take an urgent call and stepped out into the hallway, where she could still hear their conversation. 23rd floor, amazing view of the park, she overheard. 1,010 square feet, kitchen living room area, and 2 bedrooms, exactly what you wanted. Alexander said the money was already prepared. Christina's voice was excited. "When can we finalize the purchase?" "According to Alexander, we can do everything as soon as next week. He'll make the down payment tomorrow, and the remainder after registration. The preliminary price is $680,000. $680,000, Sophia gasped silently. That was practically all the savings she and Alexander had carefully accumulated during their marriage. Money meant for their future, the child they had waited so long to have. The child now growing inside her, unaware that its father was about to throw everything away. Suddenly, Rita's phone rang. Yes, Alexander. Yes, Christina and I are looking at the options right now. Of course, I understand you want things done quickly. Yes, I told her $680,000. All right, I'll see you tomorrow for the deposit. Sophia pressed herself against the wall, feeling her heart pounding. Alexander's plans were becoming clearer and more horrifying by the moment. But there was something else, something unspoken in the conversation. And when will the second payment be made? Rita continued. Has Campbell signed off? Great. Another $400,000 next week, and then we'll close the deal. Campbell? $400,000? Sophia tried desperately to piece it all together. Campbell was the owner of Novostroy Invest, the construction company Alexander worked for. Where could the extra $400,000 possibly be coming from? At that moment, the office door opened, and Sophia barely managed to step aside, pretending she was still on the phone. Christina walked past, smiling brightly. Excuse me, just heading to the restroom. Sophia nodded quietly, avoiding eye contact. Christina disappeared around the corner, and from the office came Rita's hushed voice again. Yes, Richard, everything's going according to plan. Weston already withdrew the money from his account and will make the deposit tomorrow. Are you sure the wife won't suspect anything? There was a short pause, followed by a soft laugh. Yes, you're right, those quiet wives usually don't suspect anything until the very last moment. Well, it's profitable for everyone involved. The apartment goes to Christina, you get your percentage, I get my commission, and everyone's happy. What? No, Weston will bring the documents tomorrow. I'll check everything. All right, talk soon. Sophia stood frozen, struggling to process everything she'd heard. It seemed the situation involved not only her and Alexander's savings but also some shady financial dealings connected to Campbell. Who knew if any of this was even legal? Lost in thought, she didn't notice the hallway filling up as other clients arrived for their meetings. Christina returned and disappeared into the office. Sophia decided she'd learned enough for today. Apologizing briefly to the receptionist for leaving unexpectedly, she hurried out of the building. Outside, Sophia took a deep breath. Her mind was spinning, but one thing was clear: she needed to act quickly. For herself, for the baby, and even for reasons she couldn't quite explain for Christina, who clearly suspected nothing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from Alexander. Honey, the trip is taking longer than expected. I'll be home in 5 days. Don't miss me too much. Love you. Sophia laughed bitterly. Now she knew exactly why her husband needed those 5 extra days to finalize the apartment deal for his mistress. Well, Alex, she thought, I've got plenty to keep me busy in these next 5 days too. The house belonged to my Uncle Michael, rest his soul, Victoria explained as they drove down the Illinois highway in her old Volkswagen. It's been empty about 5 years now. I've just been paying the bills, never got around to selling or renovating it. Small towns and wooded areas passed by outside. The April sun drifted in and out of clouds, occasionally brightening the road ahead. Sophia stared out the window blankly. Since leaving the real estate office, things had moved quickly. A follow-up visit to the doctor had confirmed her pregnancy 6 weeks. The ultrasound showed a tiny heartbeat, small but strong. Victoria had suggested Sophia spend some time in the country, away from all the drama, to clear her head. You told your husband you were on a business trip? Victoria interrupted Sophia's thoughts. Yes. Ironically, he seemed relieved. He said, perfect timing, Sophie, I'm overloaded at work and will probably be home late. Of course, that just makes it easier for him to see his little redhead, Sophia said bitterly. Don't panic yet, Victoria reassured her, turning onto a narrow dirt road. My third husband, Victor rest his soul, thought he was clever too. I arranged a little business trip for him that our neighbors still talk about. Sophia couldn't help smiling. Victoria's legendary revenge story was well known at the office, often used as a cautionary tale for younger employees. According to office legend, Victoria had greeted her cheating husband at the apartment door with his bags packed, locks changed, and an ironclad prenup that left him virtually nothing. The car pulled up beside a crooked gate. Beyond it stood a sturdy wooden house with an attic, surrounded by old apple trees. We're here, Victoria announced. It's no palace, but the roof doesn't leak, and the stove works. Most importantly, it's peaceful, exactly what you need right now. They walked along an overgrown path to the porch. Victoria fumbled with the keys for a moment until the door finally opened with a loud creak. What the hell? Who are you? A man's voice rang out from the shadowy interior. Victoria yelped, dropping her purse. In the kitchen doorway stood a tall, lean man in his 40s with a 3-day beard and wary eyes. "I should be asking who you are," Victoria snapped, quickly regaining her composure. "How did you get in here? This is private property." "Vicky? Victoria?" The man squinted, studying her face. "Wow, didn't expect this. Don't you recognize me? Paul, Uncle Michael's nephew." "Paulie?" Victoria stammered, taken aback. "My God, I didn't even recognize you. You were in prison," Paul finished calmly. 3 years. Got out on parole a month ago." An awkward silence filled the room. Sophia glanced back and forth between Victoria and the stranger, unsure what to do. "Uncle Michael never mentioned leaving the house to you," Paul finally said. "I thought it was still mine." "It is yours legally," Victoria sighed. "Uncle Michael asked me to look after it while you were away, but then he died before he could make a proper will. I've just been paying bills all this time, assuming you'd be locked up much longer." "Got it," Paul nodded. "Well, since the house is mine, come on in. Be my guests." He stepped aside, letting the women into the house. Inside was tidy and smelled faintly of fresh-cut wood. In the corner of the living room was a stack of lumber and tools. "I've been fixing things up slowly," Paul explained, noticing Sophia's gaze. "Repaired the porch, replaced the floors in the bedroom. These walls are about 100 years old or more, been in the family since my great-grandfather's day." "Where have you been this past month?" Victoria asked. "I stopped by to check the house in early April. There was no sign of anyone." "I went to Chicago looking for work," Paul shrugged. "But who's going to hire an ex-con? So I decided to stay here and maybe get some odd jobs around town, fixing fences, repairing roofs. I still remember how. I worked construction in prison." Victoria looked around the house doubtfully. "Maybe it's better if we leave. We don't want to get in your way." "Where would you go?" Paul protested. "The house is big enough for everyone. The second bedroom is ready. You can stay there. I'll sleep on the kitchen sofa." And just like that, Sophia found herself unexpectedly sharing a roof with a stranger, a former prisoner, no less. Yet strangely, she felt no fear. Paul's clear gray eyes showed hidden pain and exhaustion, but not a hint of aggression or deceit. That evening, after Victoria returned to Chicago, "I've got work tomorrow, honey, but I'll be back this weekend with groceries." Sophia and Paul sat on the porch, watching the fading sunset. To her own surprise, Sophia found herself telling him everything: her long-awaited pregnancy, her husband's betrayal, and the conversation she'd overheard at the realtor's office. "Now I just don't know what to do," she finished, staring into the darkening sky. "Victoria says I should gather evidence of his cheating and financial schemes, then file for divorce. But part of me wonders, what if he's just confused? 15 years together isn't a joke." 15 years, Paul repeated thoughtfully. "In prison, I had plenty of time to think about how quickly life can change. How suddenly things you thought were unshakable can collapse overnight. And also about how sometimes life gives you a second chance." "What were you in for?" Sophia asked directly. "Embezzlement," Paul replied calmly. "But I didn't do it. I was the finance director for Novostroy Invest, a construction company. Sound familiar?" Sophia flinched. That was Alexander's company. Campbell, the owner, was running shady deals with investors' money, Paul continued. "When I discovered the shortages and planned to report it to the police, he set me up. All the evidence pointed to me. Believe me, it was perfectly executed." "Nobody believed you?" Sophia asked quietly. "My colleagues turned their backs. Even my lawyer thought I was guilty and just wouldn't admit it. I refused a plea deal because I didn't commit the crime." Paul smiled bitterly. "The result, 3 years behind bars instead of probation, which I might have gotten if I'd confessed." "How did you survive in there?" Sophia shuddered involuntarily. "At first, I didn't think I would," Paul admitted honestly. "The first few months were hell. Then I met an old man serving his 3rd sentence. He said to me, 'Son, remember, they can take your freedom, your money, even years of your life, but your soul and dignity, they can only have if you surrender them.' So that's how I held on." They fell silent. Crickets chirped in the grass, and a dog barked in the distance. "You said Campbell's involved in these apartment schemes," Paul said eventually, breaking the silence. "And you overheard something about an extra $400,000. "Yes," Sophia nodded. "I didn't fully understand, but it sounded like Alexander was planning to use not just our savings, but money from the company too." "History repeats itself," Paul said softly. "Campbell hasn't learned anything, or maybe he's learned too well. Now he's setting your husband up, just like he did to me." Sophia stared at him in shock. "Do you think Alexander could end up in prison?" If he's really taking company money, almost certainly, Paul replied. Campbell never risks his own skin, he always finds someone else to take the fall. They talked until late into the night. Sophia shared the long story of her marriage, their dream of having a child, and their exhausting attempts at IVF. Paul opened up about his past life, his time working at Novostroy, and his ex-wife, who hadn't waited for him to get out of prison. In the morning, Sophia woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and fried eggs. Paul was busy in the kitchen. Good morning, he smiled. Sleep well? Better than I expected, Sophia admitted honestly, sitting at the table. Smells delicious. I learned to cook in prison. Paul placed a plate of eggs in front of her. Worked in the kitchen. The menu there wasn't exactly fancy, but I learned the basics. Over breakfast, Sophia decided to share a thought that had kept her awake last night. You know, I've been thinking maybe I should meet Christina. Not as Alexander's wife, just as a casual acquaintance. Why? Paul asked, surprised. She's a victim too. She doesn't know Alexander's married or that he's planning some shady financial scheme. Sophia turned her cup nervously in her hands. I saw how she looks at him, the way she talks about him. She really loves him and is genuinely happy about having their child. She has no idea she's about to be caught in the middle of a scandal. What would you say to her? Hi, I'm your lover's wife? No, of course not, Sophia objected. Just meet her casually. Get to know more about her relationship with Alexander, what he's told her. Maybe I can understand how deeply she's involved. Paul studied her thoughtfully. You're an incredible woman, Sophia. Most people in your place would only be thinking about revenge. You know, she answered softly, when I found out Alexander was cheating, my first thought was how could he do this to me? To us? But then I saw Christina, her happiness, her excitement about the baby, and wondered if he's doing the same thing to her. Using her, lying to her. She probably thinks he's single and that they're building a family together. And what will you do if you find out he was really planning to leave you for her? Sophia looked out the window at the morning sunlight filtering through the old apple tree. I honestly don't know, she admitted. But whatever happens, I need to protect myself and my child. And that means figuring out what's really going on. After breakfast, Sophia called Victoria to check in. Victoria told her she'd sent her nephew, a lawyer, to look into the financial side of things, just in case they had to discuss asset division. But first we need proof, Victoria reminded her. Are you going to the agency today? I spoke to my friend. She said Rita will be there until evening. I'll go, Sophia said decisively. I just need to think of a way to cross paths with her again. I have a better idea, Paul interrupted. If Alexander is planning to use company money and Campbell's involved, we need to dig deeper. We need to find out if they're preparing another scam. He took Sophia's phone from her hand. Victoria, do you remember Edward Stone from the prosecutor's office? He used to handle inheritance cases for your firm. Of course, I remember him. He's with the investigative committee now, Victoria replied. Perfect. I think we should tell him about these suspicious transactions at Novostroy. If Campbell's up to something shady again, it's better to alert the authorities before innocent people get hurt. What about Alexander? Sophia asked anxiously. If he's really involved, Paul said firmly, he'll have to face the consequences. Just like I had to for something I didn't even do. The next 3 days flew by in frantic activity. Victoria contacted Edward Stone, who showed immediate interest in potential fraud at Novostroy. Paul drafted a detailed letter, describing the schemes Campbell had used 3 years ago, along with his suspicions about the current situation. Sophia overcame her hesitation and called the real estate agency again, introducing herself as a friend of Christina's who was also looking for an apartment. Luck was on her side. Christina agreed to meet at the agency. My cousin Rita can get us a great discount, Christina said cheerfully on the phone. Let's meet there tomorrow at 3. You can see the apartments they showed me. Maybe you'll like Sunny Park too. During these days, a strange but comforting friendship grew between Sophia and Paul. They talked long into the evenings on the porch. Paul shared his plans restoring the house, maybe opening a small woodworking shop. You know, prison taught me I really love working with wood, he said, gently stroking the rough railing. Wood is honest. It never pretends to be something it's not. It won't betray you if you respect it. Sophia listened, thinking about how unfair life could be. A decent, intelligent man had spent 3 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, while people like Campbell and possibly her husband continued to live comfortably, building their fortune on others' misery. On the day she was to meet Christina, Sophia took extra care with her appearance. She styled her hair neatly, put on a modest dress, and applied subtle makeup. Nervous? Paul asked as he drove her to the station in the old Honda he'd inherited from his uncle along with the house. Terribly, Sophia admitted. What will I even say? How can I look her in the eyes? Just be yourself, Paul advised gently. And remember, whatever happens today, life goes on tomorrow. You'll get through this. He tentatively touched her hand, just a light, fleeting contact, but Sophia felt an unexpected calm. The new home real estate agency welcomed Sophia with bright lights and buzzing voices. Christina was already there, sitting in the same chair as before. Hi. You must be Sophia. Christina smiled warmly, rising with effort. I'm Christina. Nice to meet you. Her sincere friendliness instantly disarmed Sophia. How could she hold anger toward this young woman who had done nothing wrong? Nice to meet you too, Sophia. She shook the offered hand. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Oh, don't mention it. I get so bored going to appointments alone. My husband travels a lot for work. Sometimes I feel like I'm facing everything alone. Husband? Sophia flinched inwardly but kept her smile calm. Has your cousin arrived yet? She'll be here shortly. She's finishing up another meeting. Christina's phone suddenly rang. She frowned, stepping aside and answering quietly. Despite her lowered voice, Sophia overheard every word. Christina, calm down, Alexander pleaded. You know how much I love you and our baby. But in business, sometimes you have to compromise. Compromise? Christina whispered sharply. You know what? I'm tired of your secrets. Either you come here right now and explain everything, or what? Alexander interrupted after a pause. Or I'll go meet your mother myself. Christina snapped. For almost 2 years, you've avoided introducing us, claiming she's too old-fashioned. Maybe I should talk to her directly? No, Alexander shouted so loudly Christina pulled the phone away from her ear. Not that. I'll be right there. Wait for me. The call ended abruptly. Christina stared in confusion at her phone, then at Rita and Sophia. Something isn't right here, she murmured. I've never heard him sound so scared. Maybe he's hiding something? Sophia cautiously suggested, choosing her words carefully. She still hadn't decided whether to tell Christina the truth. You know, Christina suddenly turned to her, it always seemed strange to me. In 2 years of our relationship, I've never once been to his home. We always meet at my place or a hotel. And those constant business trips. Rita cleared her throat awkwardly. Maybe I'll leave you two alone? I have other clients. After the realtor stepped away, Sophia made up her mind. Christina, I think we need to have a serious talk. About what? Christina raised an eyebrow in surprise. About Alexander. You see, I've known him much longer than you realize. Christina frowned. What do you mean? Sophia took a deep breath. I am his wife, Sophia Weston. She gently patted the chair beside her. Sit down, tell me more about the apartment you're looking for. It's for your family too, right? The next hour passed in a surreal state for Sophia. She found herself chatting warmly with her husband's lover, discussing apartment layouts, and listening patiently to Christina's joyful stories about how Alex was taking care of their future child. He's so responsible, Christina chirped happily. Can you imagine, while we're apartment hunting, he's already found a maternity hospital and even picked out nursery furniture. He keeps telling me, sweetheart, don't worry about anything, I'll take care of it. But sometimes, I get the feeling he's hiding something. You know, stepping out to take phone calls, always looking tense. I bet he is, Sophia thought bitterly, but instead she said aloud. Maybe he's got problems at work. Lots of companies are struggling these days. Yes, probably, Christina nodded. He's the sales director at a construction firm. He doesn't talk much about his job, says he doesn't want to burden me with guy stuff. At that moment Rita, the realtor Sophia had seen previously, approached them. Luckily, she didn't recognize her. Hi, sis, Rita hugged Christina warmly. You must be Sophia? Nice to meet you. Christina mentioned you're also interested in apartments here? Yes, Sophia lied. I'd like to see some options at Sunny Park. Great choice, Rita said enthusiastically. Very reliable developer, everything completed on schedule. By the way, you have a connection there, Christina. Campbell, the owner of Novostroy, personally oversees that project. Sophia tensed at the familiar name. Really? Christina seemed surprised. Alex never mentioned it. Well, Campbell's a big boss, and your Alexander is just a sales director, Rita laughed. But just between us girls, Campbell personally approved your deal. He even arranged a special mortgage with no down payment. You're very lucky. Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. A no down payment mortgage? Alexander had told Christina he was buying the apartment outright. Really? She blurted out. No down payment? Isn't that extremely rare? It's a special case, Rita smiled meaningfully. Campbell personally guaranteed it, since Alexander works for him. But the mortgage terms are standard 20 years, about $5,000 a month. Christina frowned. Wait, Rita, I don't understand. Alex said we were buying it with our savings. What mortgage? Rita looked at her sister, confused. But he was here yesterday signing preliminary mortgage paperwork. He said you'd both discussed it. No, Christina shook her head, visibly confused. He never mentioned that. In fact, he's always insisted he hates loans and debt. Sophia watched as confusion, then anxiety, appeared on Christina's face. She could almost feel Alexander's carefully built house of lies crumbling. Maybe he wanted to surprise you? Rita suggested uncertainly. Taking care of all the details himself? No, something's definitely wrong. Christina took out her phone. I'm calling him now. Maybe you shouldn't? Sophia blurted. What if it really is meant as a surprise? But Christina had already pressed call. The phone rang a few times before Alexander answered, loud enough for them all to hear, even without speakerphone. Christina, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back. I'm at the real estate agency, Christina interrupted sharply. Your mortgage is ready 20 years, Alexander. What's going on? There was silence on the other end, then a heavy sigh. Christina, let me explain everything tonight. I'll come over and... No, explain right now. Tears crept into Christina's voice. You promised me an apartment. You said you had the money, and now it turns out you're putting us into debt for 20 years. It's not like that, sweetheart, Alexander stammered nervously. It's safer this way. Officially it'll be a mortgage, but I'll pay off the whole thing immediately. It's just for Campbell for accounting purposes. What accounting purposes? Christina was nearly shouting. What are you hiding from me, Alexander? First the endless business trips, now some secret deals. Christina's face turned pale as chalk. She grabbed the chair's armrest, as if afraid of falling. Is this a joke? She whispered. You're kidding, right? I really wish I were, Sophia answered quietly, pulling her passport from her bag. Here, look, Sophia Victoria Weston, married to Alexander Weston for 15 years. With trembling hands, Christina took the document, stared at the marriage registration stamp, then lifted her eyes back to Sophia. But he told me he said he'd never been married. I know, Sophia gently took her passport back. He's hidden a lot. From you, from me. From me, from you. Oh my God, Christina covered her face with her hands. I'm such an idiot. How did I miss all those signs, all those trips? Sophia hesitantly touched her shoulder. It's not your fault. He's very convincing. Christina raised her head sharply, her eyes blazing with anger. What about you? How long have you known about me? Did you just come here to look at the fool your husband was deceiving? No, Sophia exclaimed. I found out just a few days ago. I overheard your conversation at the medical center. Christina gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. At the medical center? Dr. Miller's? You were there? Yes, Sophia nodded. I'm pregnant too. 6 weeks. The room filled with a heavy silence. Christina stared at Sophia, eyes wide, anger fading slowly into a strange understanding. So that's why, she whispered. That's why he was rushing to get the apartment. He found out you were pregnant and decided to secure at least me and our child before you threw him out. Sophia smiled bitterly. I think it's more complicated than that. First, he doesn't yet know I'm pregnant. And second, it's not just our personal savings involved here. She shared everything Paul had told her about possible fraud at the company, about the suspicious extra $400,000 Campbell was approving, and Rita's suspicious phone call. Christina listened, her expression growing darker by the minute. I don't believe it, she finally said. Alexander wouldn't. He'd never get involved in something illegal. He always said honesty was everything in business. Really? Sophia sighed. He spent years telling me faithfulness was everything in marriage. They fell silent, absorbing the bitter irony of the situation. Suddenly, Christina stood up decisively. He'll be here soon. We'll get answers directly from him. Alexander rushed into the agency 40 minutes later, out of breath, his hair disheveled, his jacket hastily buttoned. When he saw Christina sitting next to an unfamiliar woman, he froze, then slowly approached, as if moving through a dream. Christina, I can explain everything, he began, but stopped abruptly, recognizing the other woman's face. Sophie? What? Hello, Alex, Sophia said calmly, tightening her protective embrace around Christina's shoulders. Surprised? What's going on? He looked from his wife to his lover and back again. Sophie, what are you doing here? How do you know Christina? We met recently, Sophia replied coldly. Turns out, we have a lot in common. For example, the same man. You said you were never married, Christina whispered, that your mother wouldn't approve of me because she's too conservative. But she's been living with you for 7 years? Christina, that's not true. Alexander crouched down in front of them, reaching for Christina's hand, but she pulled away. Don't touch me, her voice trembled. I thought you were the most honest man in the world. I believed every word you said. And all this time. I love you, Alexander interrupted. I really do. Yes, I'm sorry to Sophia, no argument there. But for the last 2 years, our marriage was just on paper. We slept in different rooms, lived like neighbors. What? Sophia exclaimed angrily. You're lying even now. Enough. Christina cut them off loudly. I don't care about your personal drama. I only want to know one thing. Is it true, Alexander, that you're planning to use illegal schemes to buy the apartment? Alexander turned pale. What nonsense is this? Who told you that? Is it true? Christina pressed on, ignoring his question. The realtor mentioned some special arrangement with Campbell, something about $400,000. Darling, you don't understand, Alexander started, but his phone loudly rang in his jacket pocket. He pulled out his smartphone, glanced at the screen, and paled even more. Yes, Richard. Yes. What? How? Got it. I'm on my way now. He ended the call and looked at the women with a hunted expression. There's an audit at the office, he said hoarsely. The investigative committee. Someone leaked info about possible fraud involving investors' money. Oh God. Sophia whispered. So it's true. You really? I didn't do anything. Alexander shouted. Campbell made it all up. I was just following orders. He said it was legal, a normal business scheme. Like with Paul Harrison 3 years ago? Sophia asked quietly. Alexander froze. How do you know about Harrison? Doesn't matter, Sophia shook her head. What matters is the story's repeating itself. Only this time, you'll be the scapegoat. What? Alexander looked confused, shifting his gaze between his wife and lover. Who's Harrison? What does he have to do with this? Believe me, Campbell set up worse people, Sophia sighed. And how could you get involved with these crooks? For what, Alex? For money? For you both, Alexander suddenly shouted, his face twisted. For you and Christina. You think it's easy to keep 2 homes? Take you to doctors all these years, pay for endless IVF treatments that went nowhere, and then care for Christina and our unborn child. Where else could I get so much money on my salary? What did you expect? Sophia asked, bitterness rising in her throat. To live a double life forever? To pay a 20-year mortgage while being torn between 2 families? That was the plan, Alexander stammered, then shook his head. But what difference does it make now? It's over. If the investigative committee is involved, I'm done. Campbell always said, if anything goes wrong, it'll be you who pays. Fear flashed in his eyes, real, primal fear. Sophia had never seen him like this, trapped, desperate. I have to run, he muttered, to the office, to grab the documents before it's too late. Stop, Christina stood, blocking his way. You're not going anywhere. If you committed a crime, you have to answer for it. You don't understand, Alexander almost begged. Campbell's probably destroying evidence, moving money. They'll lock me up like Harrison. So you know Paul? Sophia asked quietly. Of course I know him, Alexander said impatiently. He was finance director when I joined the company. Then he was accused of embezzlement and jailed. Oh God, Campbell's doing the same to me. Sophia and Christina exchanged looks. Both saw the same truth. The man they loved and trusted wasn't just a liar, he was a potential criminal. Here's the deal, Sophia said firmly. We need to call Investigator Stone. He's handling the case. If you cooperate, there's still a chance to avoid prison. Sophie, you've lost your mind. Alexander grabbed her hand. I can't. Campbell will find out, and then. Campbell's not worried about you right now, Sophia cut him off. Believe me, he's already saving his own skin. If you don't want to be the only one blamed, you should think about a deal with the investigation. Sophia's phone rang. It was Paul. Sophia, his voice was urgent. Is everything okay there? Stone called, said they've already started investigating Novostroy. Campbell tried to flee but was caught at the airport. Is Alexander with you? Yes, she said, keeping her eyes on her husband, and Christina too. We've figured everything out. Great. Stone asked me to tell you that if Weston agrees to testify against Campbell, he has a good chance of getting probation. Sophia relayed the message to Alexander, who slowly sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. So ridiculous, he muttered. It all turned out so stupid. No kidding, Christina said bitterly, rubbing her belly absent-mindedly. To fool two women, get involved with crooks, risk your freedom, all for what? Suddenly, Sophia felt an overwhelming exhaustion. All the tension, revelations, and shock. It was too much for 1 week, too much for one woman, especially one who was pregnant. I need some fresh air, she said. Christina, want to come with me? To her surprise, Christina nodded and stood up. And me? Alexander asked, confused. What should I do? Call Stone, Sophia said over her shoulder, handing him the investigator's business card. And pray your boss doesn't destroy all the evidence. On a bench in the park opposite the real estate agency, two women sat together, one in a sharp business suit, the other in a loose maternity dress. If a passerby saw them talking, they'd never guess these were the wife and the lover of the same man. I'm filing for divorce, Sophia said, watching cars pass by. No matter what happens with his case, our marriage is over. I'll probably move back with my parents, Christina sighed. To Springfield. It'll be better for the baby. Aren't you scared? Sophia asked softly. Raising a baby alone? Yes, I'm scared, Christina admitted honestly. But better that than with a man who lives a lie. The baby deserves better. So do I. Sophia nodded silently, thinking of Paul's calm confidence, their evening talks on the porch, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't noticing. You know, she said thoughtfully, they say sometimes to really move forward, you have to take a step back. Return to your roots and start over. Sounds wise, Christina smiled. And you? Do you have a place to return to? Sophia thought of the country house, the old apple trees outside the window, the sunrises she'd watched from the porch these past few days, and how easy it was to breathe there, away from the city's chaos and lies. Yes, she smiled, I think I do. 3 months later, Sophia sat on the porch of the renovated house, enjoying a warm July evening. Her growing belly didn't yet hinder her movements much, but clearly reminded her of the new life inside. Coffee's ready, Paul said, stepping onto the porch carrying a tray with 2 cups. He had changed noticeably in those months, tanned, stronger from physical work, and with a quiet confidence in his eyes. Thank you, Sophia smiled, taking the cup. By the way, Victoria called. Said the divorce papers are ready. Alexander signed everything. Paul sat down beside her on the wooden bench. Any news about his case? 2 years probation. Sophia took a sip of her fragrant coffee. Campbell got a real sentence, 7 years in prison. And Alexander, thanks to cooperating, avoided jail. He even got a new job. Seems like an insurance company. What about your share of the apartment? Paul asked. He agreed to pay me compensation. Sophia placed a hand on her belly. Enough to set up the nursery and still have some left. Victoria made sure everything was done legally. They sat quietly, watching the last rays of the sun turn the apple trees golden. And Christina? Paul asked. Have you talked to her? She called yesterday, Sophia nodded. She's settled in Springfield, got a job at a fitness club teaching prenatal classes. Looks like things are working out for her. Funny how, Paul said thoughtfully, something good can come from such an ugly story. You know, Sophia turned to him, my grandmother always said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. In her own way, she was right. No matter how fate twists and turns, everyone eventually gets what they deserve. Alexander lost me, Christina, and his reputation. Campbell went to prison, just like you did unfairly. And us? We found each other, Paul finished softly, gently wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Over these months, their relationship slowly grew from friendship into something more. No rush, no drama, just simple and natural, like it should be when two people really belong together. Do you think it'll last? Sophia asked, watching the fading sunset. I believe it's forever, Paul replied simply. When you spend 3 years locked up, you learn to value what's real. What we have, it's real, Sophie. And way more honest than what you had with Alexander. Sophia smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. In those months, she'd learned a simple truth. Sometimes you have to lose your old life to find the real one. Sometimes the most unexpected turn in fate leads to happiness. You know what's the most amazing thing? She said, looking up at the first stars lighting the evening sky. I'm not angry at Alexander anymore. If it weren't for his betrayal, I probably never would have changed my life. Never met you. Never found this house, this peace. Fate, Paul nodded. Or as my grandma Clara used to say, everything happens for a reason. Even if at first it seems like a disaster, Sophia added. Her phone rang in the pocket of her light sundress. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and raised her eyebrows in surprise. "It's Christina," she told Paul as she answered. "Hey, did you forget to tell me something yesterday?" "What? Really? That's interesting. Of course, come over, you know the address." "Oh, and Paul will be happy too. We're waiting." She ended the call and turned to an intrigued Paul. Christina had the baby. A girl 3 kilos, 800 grams. Named her Hope. And she's coming to visit us next week. To show off the baby. Can you imagine? That's quite a surprise, Paul smiled. And you know what's even more amazing? Sophia laughed. She said she met a nice doctor at the hospital who's interested in her. Life goes on, right? They sat on the porch of the old house they'd renovated with their own hands, watching stars appear over the quiet suburbs. Ahead of them lay a whole summer, a whole life, and many wonderful surprises fate still had in store. And the greatest one was peacefully growing inside Sophia's belly, a tiny person worth every trial she'd faced. And Alexander still doesn't know I'm expecting too, Sophia thought with a touch of sadness. But that secret no longer mattered. Her life had taken a completely different path. And no matter how unexpected the turn, for the first time in years, she truly felt happy. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It motivates us to create new, exciting stories every day. Don't miss the next video, you'll see it on the main screen right now. Take care and be happy.